time. No.
Oh,
we are live. Hello, everyone. This is Elizabeth and Stell. We are here at the Titusville City Hall. I'm on my computer. You might hear some traffic. If you guys have a chance, let us know if you can hear us well. There's a storm kind of rolling in. We got done with the PFAS presentation. We had a lot of discussions with people walking out, so that's why we were a little late hopping on. I'm gonna try to share this from the. Oh no, it's showing up in the Fight for Zero before I look at.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay, great, because I thought I was too late of getting on, so I was a little worried about that. Let me know if you guys can hear this. I see Ann is on, Angela is on. If you guys can hear this, let us know. I'm gonna go to the comments here because we do have some traffic and some noise in the background. Can hear you. Thank you, Jeff. So, guys, we are at Titusville City Hall, and we just got done with the PFAS presentation. I don't even know where to begin on this presentation. It was everything I thought it was going to be, although there was some discussion about doing some testing ahead of schedule and to be proactive, but there wasn't a decision made on that. I did take notes. So where do we want to start? What were some things that stuck out to you in this PFAS presentation? You want to start?
Yeah, I think the thing that really stuck out to me the most is kind of this, let's wait until we have these standard numbers. Let's wait until we have these regulated numbers. And I think that it's really, really important to remember that there's been a lot of research done on PFAS, and that's the reason that we are where we're at with the EPA making such a drastic change in their advisories. And it's going to have to go through channels and go through certain aspects of the government in order to actually make that a regulation. And I'm sure there's a lot of industry fighting that. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me why we, knowing that the information that we have already is enough to know that we should at the very least be testing and making sure that the residents of the city are at least armed with information so that they can protect themselves.
So I do want to be transparent in the fact that we were able to meet with 3 city council members. There were 2 that we were not able to meet with. One completely declined, and that was Jordan. He didn't seem interested at all in a community perspective on this subject, and he also didn't seem interested in an environmental health organization's input on this situation. And one thing I definitely want to highlight is that Fight for Zero is a nonprofit organization, and we are a resource for these communities when it comes to these subjects, whether it's water quality issues, sewage spills, PFAS contamination in drinking water, or other contaminations such as perchlorate, or just other issues that people are facing that need resources and input and help from an advocacy level and from an expert level. We do work with numerous experts on a national level. So I did want to put it out there. Jordan did not want to meet with us. He didn't seem to want a community perspective. And that's always very frustrating for us when we don't have that collaboration and we don't have a city council member that wants to work with the community. One thing that we were told is that the city council looks at the staff, such as the city water resource director and the city manager, as the experts. So that's our understanding, is that they look at them as the experts. So what they say is expert advice, which a little frustrating tonight. I can tell that the water resource director did some studying up on PFAS in the last few weeks since the last city council meeting. But I was still a little frustrated because it felt as though, listen, I've been on PFAS for 4 years straight. I've been working on a national level. I know this inside and out. And so it's hard when people look at others as experts that don't do epidemiology or toxicology or work with any of those experts and try to tell the community that things are safe, or that, oh, it's just a drop inside of an Olympic size pool, or that PFAS is in everything. Now, yes, it is in everything, but there's just so many missing components to that discussion. And we pretty much anticipated that's kind of where the direction was going. I was proud of some of the council members because they asked some really good questions. And
I do appreciate,
yes,
I do really appreciate Mayor Diesel really pushing the idea that you can't test too much, you can't have too much information, and there's really no reason to wait. And I do really appreciate that. That's a positive direction to move in. Sorry, there's trucks.
Yeah, there's a fire truck going by, so if you guys can't hear us, that's why.
So I'm with you. I think that overall, I would say that we moved in a positive direction with this meeting, but I was a little disturbed at some of the things that were said
That's a good
by
word for it.
council
Disturbed.
members and even the water resources director. It disturbs me that his reference to there being 4,000 of these chemicals. Well, it's more like 9,000. I think that it's a little misleading to say that, oh, we tested in 2014 and nothing came back. Well, they tested 6. Was it 6
It was
that they
6
actually tested for?
in 2014.
And the new testing is going to be 46, and we're going to wait 2 years to do that, and it really just doesn't make a lot of sense from a community health standpoint. Definitely makes sense on a saving money, not wanting to move forward with things because it might look bad, but it makes zero sense from a community health standard point.
One of the arguments that they had was like PFAS is in everything, and I've said this at the last regular council meeting. Again, if you guys can't hear us, because there's a lot of traffic in front of this city hall. I didn't want to do it inside because it echoes and it's very loud, and they're in a regular city council meeting tonight. So that's why we are outside. We're trying not to interfere with their meeting inside. But, there's I don't know what you would call them, but a lot of municipalities, when they first get introduced to this subject of PFAS being potentially in the drinking water, a lot of times they get scared of the subject because they're like, oh my God, this is a liability. Like, how are we going to approach this? This is all new to us. It can be scary. And one of the things that they were like, well, PFAS is in everything. And one thing they kept bringing up was Teflon pans. And they're like, oh, it's in the cookware. And I'm like, go to Walmart right now, you guys. I challenge everyone watching this. Go to Walmart, walk down the aisle, and tell me what those pans say. Tell me if you see PFOA, PFOS free now. And they tried to argue, and it is in a lot of consumer products. I'm not saying it's not, but we have come a long way in the last few years regarding that. I mean, L'Oreal, which is a makeup brand, has committed to taking it out of their products. We've had fast food restaurants committing to taking it out of their wrappers. So, when they try to bring up, a lot of times it feels as though when they say, well, it's in everything. This is an argument we hear day in and day out, just in general, when it comes to things causing cancer. For instance, we'll hear people say everything causes cancer nowadays. And I'm like, why do we not demand better? Why is it okay? Why are we accepting this level of poison and chemicals in our drinking water, in our air, in our food?
I think that it's all the more reason to make sure that the most basic of things, the most essential thing, water, is clean. Because there is so much of it in our environment, there's a high likelihood that it could get into your drinking water. It's a high likelihood that it's in a well. It's a high likelihood, in areas. And so if it's in absolutely everything, and this is something that's in our environment, and it's all over the place, and we should be taking every measure possible to make sure that it's not in our drinking water. I mean, it makes sense to me.
So one of the things too that they brought up was our test, the Fight for Zero's Sandpoint Park drinking water fountain test. This was a part of a project we did across the county where we tested drinking water fountains. And one of those drinking water fountains was at Sandpoint Park. We call that ground zero because that's where the 7 million gallons of sewage spilled. There's like so many issues over there. But we detected PFAS in the water, the drinking water fountain. And they actually the water resource director put that in his presentation. And he acted as though he didn't know we were the ones that did that testing. And he mentioned, oh, a citizen brought us this test they did. So I had to go up during the public comment portion and correct him and say, no, our nonprofit organization, Fight for Zero, took that sample and we did it according to the 533 method. We had the instructions. You're not supposed to wear makeup. It's very detailed and very specific how you collect these samples. And we've been doing this long enough, and we've been working with the laboratories like PACE and Eurofins. Like, we know all of the laboratories. And it's frustrating when they try to discredit those kinds of things. Now, they are right. This particular testing wasn't done 533 method. It wasn't done the method that they approve of. So to them, it's not valid. So I challenged them. I said on public record, please check our work. Use your method that you approve of, hire your tech, and go to the same exact drinking water fountain and take another sample and do the test then. And then I also offered, because I said, if we find funding, we will go and we will do the certified testing at people's houses and do more testing in the city of Titusville. I really don't want to go down that road because it's a lot of funding and we have to raise that funding. It can add up. I mean, just for one test, it was $470, and that wasn't doing certified. So it can be about $1,000 a test because you want to do a blank, which, tells you if PFAS is in the environment. Another thing that I didn't get to mention while we were in there, because somebody did ask about if somebody tests in their house and they find PFAS, do they need to use that method? And we're all looking at each other like, no. If it's detected, Cyclopure, I trust Cyclopure. And I encourage you guys to call them and ask them detailed questions about their testing method and how reliable it is. But I found it disturbing, I like that word, that people told me they called the city and the city water resource department and asked them about testing their own water, and they were discouraged from doing it. And they were told, well, if you breathe on the test wrong, it's going to be PFAS. There's going to be PFAS. That is not how you educate your community. Yeah. You do not discourage them from getting information and by just making them feel stupid and criticizing them and making them feel as though they don't know what they're talking about. That's how you get rumors started. That's how you get misinformation spread in your city. That is not a legitimate way to have a conversation with your community and educate them about a very serious topic like PFAS. And wasn't it apparent to you that some of the council members thought that this was not an issue at all? I got that feeling.
Yes. I think that some of the comments made and some of the discussion, it was clear that they were not versed in this subject at all.
Oh, yeah.
It was clear to me that there were a couple council members that had pretty much just never even heard of what PFAS is. And I get that. I understand. They're not here to know everything. But given that, we've had the opportunity to discuss this before with the city, and it's been last couple weeks that there's a lot of really good information out there. There's a lot of experts out there. There's a lot of people to talk to where you can really, you don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to be a brainiac to really understand that there are certain levels of certain chemicals that bioaccumulate. That's not that big of a word.
Where it builds up in your body.
It builds up in your body.
They talk about that drop in the Olympic-sized pool.
Right,
what they fail to mention is
if you take 10,000 drops over a lifetime, you're going to be sick. Right,
yeah.
Right. So
that's what they don't mention. They try to make it look like such a mediocre issue. They're like, it's just a drop in this big pool.
Which, I can't expect every city council member to be completely well versed. They're certainly not going to know as much as you do on this subject. They're certainly not going to be coming at it from my angle. But as just a community health issue, it is so important to arm the citizens with the tools that they need to be able to protect themselves. This is going to be extremely expensive. If they were to find out that there were high levels of PFAS in the drinking water and they had to overhaul the entire system and they had to put whole new filtration systems and they had to put all, it would be extremely expensive. So at the very least, we need to arm the citizens with the tools that they need. And that is,
well, they're not detecting it at the water treatment plant.
Right,
according to a 2014 test, which there was a really good question that wasn't answered tonight. What did that test detect to? How low did that detect? Because our test now can detect down to 4 parts per trillion. Back then, it probably wasn't able to detect that low. But our question was, well, and somebody asked this, one of the council members asked, can it test non-detect at the water treatment plant, but can it test positive in people's homes and outside? And they said, yes, it can.
Right.
And another citizen brought up a good point about how there's all these well fields, and they were like, well, why can't you guys find the source? And like, which one is contaminated? And there was some good questions and some good engagement by the few who showed up. I do recognize that it was at 5:30, which is a very difficult time on a work night. So I just want to say that. I know I put a picture of empty seats, but it's so important that you guys get involved in your cities and in these discussions so that they know it's important to you.
It's boring, it's time consuming, it's not a lot of fun, but it is super, super important for the health of the community, for people to show up and engage with the members that are running the community. Like, they can't know what people are wanting. They are not mind readers. It's hard because I am frustrated with some of the city councilmen, the way that they've handled things. I am a little frustrated.
Yeah, we had one that kept bringing up bottled water.
Right.
They were so focused on bottled water. They were like, I don't even understand the point that he was trying to make. But it was very apparent to me that he felt this was a non-issue, that everything has cancer causing something.
It was pretty apparent to me that he might really understand the process of bottling, but I don't think he understands where all of that water comes from and the fact that they're really just manufacturing.
Like he brought up, he was like, is PFAS in bottled water? And then he just like wouldn't get off that subject. And I'm like, nobody nobody in this entire room encouraged people to buy bottled water. I have always, and you can go back to my blogs, you can go back to my website, I have always discouraged people from buying cases and cases of bottled water for multiple reasons. And one of those reasons is because of the waste that is created by buying bottled water. I mean, it's unnecessary trash. You can get filtration systems for much cheaper. You end up not paying as much if you're not buying cases of water, and you can just put it in your reusable bottle. So, they were really stuck on bottled water.
Stuck on bottled water.
It was insane.
I think we were a little stuck on the regulations. When we get a standard, when the EPA announces what the standard will be, then we can move forward. Well, the EPA just lowered their standards significantly. Thank you, Stell, and other advocates that worked on that. Significantly. I mean, they dropped it so much, and that was a huge and very bold move. It was kind of unprecedented within the EPA for them to announce that level of a difference in an advisory. So if all of this action is taking place and the EPA has dropped that advisory down to 0.002,
it's really low. It's almost to zero.
Really low. Almost zero. We almost made it to
brought up
zero.
the zero tonight. They said, is it possible to put everything to zero? And there were a couple things that really stood out to me, like
the councilman that kept bringing up the bottled
water was
he also made a comment that, if we move too fast and we do too much and we take too much out of the water, then we're making the water poison. Nope. How it works.
I was super frustrated because we are such a great resource for these cities. And I am, again, and I said this on public record tonight, I am grateful to the few council members that met with us and had these conversations prior to this meeting. And the few that did meet with us, they did ask our questions, and they're really good questions, I have to admit. I mean, I'm grateful for that. And we need more council members sitting with the community, sitting with organizations like ours that are grassroots, community driven, but also very passionate about protecting our communities and human health. And so,
on one level, I realize that we're living in a time where we have time and time again, over and over again, seen, not Titusville, but throughout the nation, we've seen water departments completely mess around, lie to people, cover things wrong. There's a mistrust in government, but we also, on the other side of that, we are also in a pretty litigation happy time with people and unnecessary and frivolous lawsuits. So I can kind of understand a city's hesitation to want to take responsibility for certain things, but I also think that it's extremely important for us to at least just get the basic information. I'm not asking for them to have a magic wand and fix everything. I think it's really, it's not a surprise to anybody that the infrastructure in Titusville is old.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think anybody's surprised by that.
Thanks for educating people about what is happening in local government about water.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question here. Leslie says, do you recommend the zero water filtration? It came with a tester, and my water tests at 0 ppm. It tastes way better. So those types of filtration systems are going to certainly help with taste. It's going to remove things like chlorine, and it's going to definitely taste better. But does it remove things like PFAS? No. You need a reverse osmosis or a granular activated carbon or an ion exchange filtration to remove things like that.
The claim on the zero water filters is that they do remove some PFAS, which I think that that's probably true with a lot of filters just because of the nature of a filter.
Yeah, let me put this in the banner real quick. Reverse osmosis. Sorry, I'm having issues because it's on my knee. You get to wobble with me. Or granular activated, and it's on our website. If you go to our website under filter, we put the names. Yeah. I'll just add this really quick. Okay. All right, so that's if you have PFAS in your drinking water. You guys have to remember there's tons of contaminants to be concerned about. But, we're talking about PFAS right now, and we don't even know if it's being found in all of the city of Titusville. We just know where we've tested near Garden Street to DeLeon is where we're getting positive results back in our tests that we've done at people's faucets. And the reason why we did the drinking water fountain project and the one at Sandpoint Park is because what cities will normally try to do, this is a back and forth thing, is they will say, oh, well, we're not responsible for the faucet inside your home because it could be your plumbing. So we wanted to get the data to see, well, is it showing up also in a public drinking water source? And that's why we did the public drinking water fountain tests. So somebody said, hold on, let me bring it up. It will poison the water to take the poison out of the water? Which buffoon said that? That person should not be in charge. I really was just confused at some of the commentary tonight. I thought, are we being serious about this discussion? I
think that I think what it was a telling comment. It was a very, very telling comment. I don't know that gentleman. I'm sure he's probably a very nice and very intelligent man. But as far as this subject goes, it is clear to me that he knows zero.
I honestly, let me look at my notes really quick because I took a lot of notes. I just basically took everything they said. because I wanted to go back and analyze it later on. There was some stuff that was wrong, just like straight wrong.
Yeah, there are not just 4,000 PFAS chemicals. That number is actually closer to 9. The cooking pans.
The cooking pans was a whole discussion.
That's being phased out.
I mean, if you go to Walmart right now and you go down the pan aisle, take some photos, you'll see that it says PFOA, PFOS free. That's been going on for nearly almost 2 years now, by the way. So when they brought up the pans, I thought, oh my God, you guys, God bless your souls, but you guys are behind on this issue.
Well, it also takes me kind of to food packaging, because
they kept bringing that up. They always,
of course, food packaging. We know that that's been an issue, but one thing is that a lot of companies have taken it upon themselves to go ahead and remove the PFAS from their food packaging, and I think they are kind of leaders in this, and there's no reason that the city of Titusville or any other city, for that matter, couldn't say, let's be the first to remove the drinking water, the PFAS from our drinking water in this area.
Here's a quote. I'm going to put it in the banner from the Water Resource Director. So it must have really bothered him, because at the last meeting, sorry if I'm moving around a lot.
Fine.
I'm going to put it in here. At the last meeting, he was asked, "Is our water safe?" And he could not confidently answer it the first time. He said, "According to our regulations, it is safe." Well, he had to bring it back up this time around, because I think it bothered him. And yes, it's safe. So this is a quote from him right here. Let me add this to the banner. I just threw this in. He said, "My children, wife, and myself drink city unfiltered tap water. And yes, it's safe."
He said,
that is his quote. No, he said, yes, it's safe. He wanted to say definitively that the water was safe tonight. 2 weeks ago, he was not confident in that discussion, though. 2 weeks ago, he was asked, and he said, according to the state and federal regulations, and we have that up in our group, he said, it is safe. And then he was asked again.
We meet all the regulations.
So we
meet all the regulations. We meet all the standards. We meet that.
He was asked again, and to confirm that, and he kind of hesitated, and we put that up in the group. And so he had to bring that back up tonight. That was the first thing he brought up when he walked up to that podium. He said, "We drink our water unfiltered." And that's fine. You know what? I'm going to bring this up. And I know this is nothing like the Flint, Michigan situation, but let me tell you, those government officials got on live television and drank their lead-tainted water and said it was safe. So there's no bearing in like what no offense, but we don't trust that because your family drinks the city of Titusville's water, that it's just safe because you drink it. What happened to data? What happened to you saying, you know what, we're going to test the drinking water fountain too, because this is a concern for us. You don't just go on record and expect somebody to believe you, because if I went up there, if it was the other way around and say Elizabeth went up there and she said, my water is not safe, my family drinks it, my wife, my husband drinks it, my kid drinks it, it's not safe. What is the city going to say if that was flipped? They're going to say, where's the tests that show it's not safe? Where's the standards? Yeah. Where's, you know what I mean? This is the type of hypocrisy and constant battle that we're in. So to go up there and just be like, it is safe because my family drinks it, that's like when people say, I think everything's safe, like because everything has cancer in it. So right. Who cares? Well, you're going to care when your child gets sick. You're going to care when you watch your father fall to his knees after working 3 jobs. You are going to care when it impacts you. This is like an invisible illness. This is an invisible chemical that a lot of people don't think about when they pick up a cup of water and drink it.
And regulation numbers and standard numbers still don't mean it's safe. There's lots of regulations and standards that throughout our government and governments throughout the world that aren't necessarily safe. So we have to be able to make up our own minds. And again, I don't mean to pat Mayor Diesel on the back so much, but he did such a great job tonight. It matters to test. It matters to know.
Ooh.
It matters to have the information.
Acor-
Then we can do.
This is a good
According to what
Sherry, according
regulations?
to what regulations exactly? Oh my gosh, perfect point. So that's a good point. That's a good discussion into. So they brought up regulations, and they brought up the 18 states that have set MCLs, which is limits, which is safety limits for these chemicals. And it's interesting that they brought that up, because I just want to point out the one thing that they don't know, because I work on a national level and I work with people that work with other congressmen in other states. So for instance, New Hampshire, they have a safety limit set for PFOA, PFOS for the drinking water. So they have to clean up according to their state regulations. That the state just went ahead and said, forget the federal government. We're not waiting for them. We see this stuff as dangerous. We're going to set a safety limit because we want to protect our communities throughout the state, right?
Florida could do that, by the way.
Florida could do that.
Florida could do that.
And they're supposed to have it set in a few years. They did it this year in session. But, and let's hope that they do it according to science. But when they brought that up tonight, and they were like, well, California, even if we tested Sandpoint, it's below those standards, the standards they all set. Let me tell you what, because of the new EPA thing that just came out, they're all discussing even lowering their standards. See, they don't know that up there in the city hall, do they? But they are. They are in discussion of lowering those standards. So it's just frustrating because they're just going to kick the can down the road, as we say, that's saying, and they're not going. They're kicking the can down the road until the federal government or somebody tells them it's not safe. And somebody got up. It was Nathan Slusher, right? He's a candidate running in Titusville, and he brought up some good points when he got up there, because he said, why are we relying on the federal government and the state? Why are we waiting around, sitting around, waiting around for them to tell us our standards? Why can't we come up with our own standards? Why is it not acceptable enough to say, as the city of Titusville, we don't accept these chemicals in our drinking water? And he did bring up some good points, and he said, just go ahead and test for it. Have the numbers ready for when those standards are set. Yep. So we know what to do, and we're ahead of the game, and we're being proactive. So, but that is a good question about the regulations that got brought up tonight.
And lawsuits are expensive. Refitting an entire city's drinking water system is expensive, but how much is the cost of life?
I mean, because these chemicals,
are scary, money's scary, but really, yeah, like, where are they going with that whole?
They say it's a drop in an Olympic pool size. So what did we get? Like 7.1 parts per trillion back in PFOS or A? I forget which one it was. I've done so many tests, but it was one of the chemicals that we found at Sandpoint Park in the drinking water, and we found. Not just Sandpoint Park, we've tested people's faucets, and it's coming out of their faucets. And one of the things that got brought up was the Guardian article, where we did a method 537 and then compared it to TOF, which is a very sensitive test. And we found 176 parts per trillion. That did not get brought up, and that did not get touched tonight on, which was interesting. But just imagine drinking as a kid, too. You're developing, so you're more vulnerable as a child. So you have these chemicals in your water. How much water do you drink, and how many times are you drinking the water over and over and over again throughout the day, throughout the weeks, throughout the months? It is building up in your body. This isn't just like a one-time exposure and you're done. If it's in your water, you're continuously exposing and building that up in your body. And so that was kind of like how I had to explain to the city council a few weeks ago. I'm like, listen, there's a difference between dermal exposure and ingestion. So there's just little things like that. So again, I'm grateful for the few city council members who met with us. I will give them a shout out. Council member Stokel, we did get a call from Jolynn, and we did get a discussion with Robinson. I don't know what happened with Robinson tonight. I don't feel like he really was listening to us. I don't really know where his mind was. I don't think he thinks this is an issue. And that is
majorly unfortunate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because...
Really, really unfortunate. Like I said, I don't know the man. I'm sure he's a really nice man, but these are people's lives, and our drinking water is the most important resource I think that we have. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
Sherry
that's
says
it.
government regulations are slackers.
They are.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up because we've brought up the Safe Drinking Water Act, and Congress brought it to the table to have a discussion about a few years back. It was such a good discussion. And if we want to take this fight anywhere, we need to take it to Washington, D.C., because there are good points here on local levels. This is really an overwhelming subject for a lot of our local municipalities. And our federal government needs to step up to protect our communities across the nation because we have so many contamination issues. And that's why we're going to Washington, D.C. On September 20th. We will be there that whole entire week having discussions with Congress and demanding that these agencies step up and do better, because you're right. Government regulations are slacking. It's been like, 24, 26 years since the last regulation on a contaminant. There's only 90 contaminants regulated in drinking water. And there's way more contaminants to be worried about. We're not just talking about PFAS. We're talking about contaminants like perchlorate. And all of this has been influenced by industry. They have industry lobbyists that do not want to have the burden of cost of cleaning it up or dealing with it. So they go and they lobby to our congressmen and they tell them, don't regulate these chemicals. And then we end up not getting them regulated. It's a horrible system. And that's why it's so important that we continue to go to Tallahassee and we continue to go to Washington, D.C., and we advocate for better regulations against these chemical companies who are not testing these chemicals before they go out into the world and contaminate all of our natural resources. What do we always talk about? Radium Girls, right?
Right.
I always go back to Radium
Yep,
Girls. There's
yep.
so many examples of this outside of this situation. But like Radium Girls, they put radium in toothpaste. They put radium in nail polish. They put radium in so many paint. And the girls were licking the paint off the clocks, and that's how they found out that it was causing issues because their jaws were falling off. If you guys haven't seen, there's a movie called Radium Girls. Just watch the movie. It's insane. And they gaslit them too, and they told them that they were, they criticized these poor women that were losing bones out of their jaws. I mean,
have lots of tissues when you watch that movie. It's hard to watch. Really, really hard to watch.
It is. It's very difficult to watch. Because we're here how many decades later dealing with the same issues, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. I mean, we have to get some kind of standards. That's why Washington, D.C. and these congressmen and women need to step up for our communities. And that's why there are amazing advocates and communities from across the nation that are coming together to really bring this message to DC, and it's so important.
I also think it's really, really important for people to understand how they can be a part of this. It is so important for you guys to vote, and not just vote, but know who these candidates are, know what they stand for, know what their knowledge, their environmental knowledge is. For me personally, I don't think that there's any other more important issue with the environment. I don't care about parties. None of that matters to me. What I want to know is how well versed in environmental issues is this person, and are they going to do right by the community? Are they going to stand up for the community health? That's all I need to know. And I think a lot of people just kind of feel like they need to stay with their party. I think there's a lot of loyalty issues there. I think a lot of people, it doesn't matter. None of that matters. You need to make sure that you know where your candidate stands on environmental issues, because you might think that they're a champion of the environment. I hear that term all the time. And the reality is
ask them how they're a champion.
How are they a champion? Is it because they went and did a trash cleanup once? Or is it because they really, really legislated to get some safer standards for drinking water?
Did they really advocate?
Did they really advocate? Have they signed off on things that were actually environmental disasters?
Even candidates, like when you're looking at candidates, you need to be asking them the hard questions. Don't just take their word for it when they say, I'm for the environment, but how? How are you? Have you been to DC? Have you been to Tallahassee? What kind of legislation have you stood behind? And what have you spoke to representatives about? And, did you get help from other organizations? And who are you working with? Like, don't be afraid to ask the questions. That's how you know who's going to represent the people.
And do engage with them. Send these people emails. It's campaign
That's another
year.
way you can help.
It is a campaigning year. They've all got Facebook pages. Message them. Ask them what they know about PFAS.
And if you can't show up to these meetings, that's a point that needs to be made, is at the very least, you need to be writing these officials. And when I did the TikTok about this situation, holy mackerel, let me tell you, thousands of emails and calls. I mean, people were not playing around. And that is the type of action that needs to happen to make a difference.
How we ended up even having this discussion tonight was
because
of all of you people out there that sent in your emails and you called the city council and you kind of grilled them on what was going on. You definitely made them realize that people in this community are concerned.
And don't be afraid to write your leaders.
They are just humans.
Do not be afraid to write them.
They might be in a position of power, but they are just humans. And so engage with them, talk to them, ask them questions, tell them your thoughts, tell them your ideas. It is important that we know and truly engage with our leadership, where we don't need to be just led around. We need for them to understand what our needs are, and they can't know what our needs and wants are. They're not mind readers. They can't do that without us telling them. That's how you are going to really affect some action and change when you're in your local community, city level, county level, and even state level, is having these conversations
and
with these people.
Direction too. Like, so when we reach out to council, we always sit down and we're like, what are the issues? And we write down the issues. And then we're like, okay, what are some solutions to those issues? Because a lot of times you'll notice, like, when you actually spend time with the council members, like you actually meet with them and they put aside that time to schedule with you, they don't want to just sit around and hear about you. Like, we get it. Like, I don't want unsafe drinking water. I don't want sewage spilled in the Indian River Lagoon. And they hear this day in and day out. Like, we could go to them and complain for the 30 minutes that we meet with them, or we can go in and say, obviously the sewage is a problem. If you don't know, what the issues are there, we'll educate you. And then we're going to get to the next point, which is the solutions. And there's this funding available. Like, help research it. Don't be afraid to bring forward different ideas. I mean, somebody was just in here talking about planting trees at Sandpoint Park and like beautifying it with all this amazing nature stuff, because they're like, we're the gateway to nature.
The native plants.
Yeah. And I'm like, don't be afraid to come forward. Like, if you see something in the city and you're like, wow, this would look better if this, use your voice. This is your community.
Yep.
This is your community. You have a voice in this community. And I really want to encourage you guys to get involved in that way. I know a lot of people come to us and they're like,
it's okay to ask questions.
Yeah.
It's okay to be curious. It's okay to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to call the city today and ask them why those guys were over in that manhole.
Mm-hmm.
You're allowed to ask those questions. That's, it's okay to do that. I mean, people get on Facebook all day long and talk about the Merritt Island Bridge.
Well, when we get called into a community, it's scary. And I'll tell you why. When you get advocates that get called into a community, it means your community doesn't feel like they're being heard. They feel like they're being dismissed, and they feel like they need a voice. And it's not good when advocates get called to your city. And so what advocates are supposed to do is come in and help the community get heard and build that bridge for communication and community engagement. And sometimes that means, meeting with the city council and having those discussions. And that was something I talked about quite often this week. I said, you guys have a serious communication issue with the community. Everybody's upset. If you ask anybody in the city of Titusville about the water, they all pretty much say the same thing. They're not happy. They're just not happy. They're not happy. They don't feel like they can drink their water. They don't feel that it's safe. They're not happy with the decades of sewage spills. They're not happy with the state of the Indian River Lagoon. They know that the water quality sucks, and so
very, very concerned.
Yeah.
I've talked to a number of people that just strictly because this water comes out of wells. They don't want to drink it. Just for that one reason. They don't want to drink it. And I know that's kind of silly in Florida because there's a lot of that going on, but like and there's the important part. It's the education. It's us educating them, it's them educating us. It's the whole community coming together and getting as much information as possible so that we can all make a good and sound decision, whether it's voting, whether it's a city council member voting on something. We have to be able to move forward with the best information that we have, and that's why these discussions are so important.
Yeah. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. We'll see what happens. And see, we did have the mayor say, I'd like to meet with you guys and have a conversation and learn more about this and blah, blah, blah. So we're going to stay on top of this. We've been on top of this. I mean, we've been on top of this since the 7 million gallon sewage spill and people started getting headaches and getting sick. And then we were able to determine that there was cyanobacteria, which is a harmful algae. It causes headaches and health issues in people. So,
and I'll tell you guys out there, I know that everybody loves Stell. She's wonderful. And she does a lot of work out here. And I am just a volunteer with Fight for Zero, but I love this organization so much and what they have done in our community and really what they've done nationwide. They are saving lives. They are saving lives with the work that they're doing. And it is so, so important. So I know that Stell gets bombarded with messages all the time. I sometimes even get bombarded with messages with people that, they want us to go check this out or check that out, thinking that something environmentally has happened. And we love that everybody wants to do that, but Stell is just one person. So, if you want for this little nonprofit to be able to continue to do that work, those donations are really, really important. I am taking it upon myself to tell you all that because Stell hates asking for money, but I can ask for money. So send me the money. Send her the money. Stell, I'm sure you can drop a link to the donation page for the website. That would be awesome. But we want for people to be able to, we want for these advocates to be able to continue to do what they do. And I oftentimes don't always have the time to give, but making a donation is a way that I can be helpful. Those donations pay for test kits. Those donations pay for, just the gas to get to a place, to look at something, to observe. I mean, there's a lot of things. And I have watched this young woman who is a cancer survivor and a mom dig into her own pocket time and time and time again to help this community out. And I think that it's important that we stand and together. And if we want her to continue this work, if we want Fight for Zero to be able to continue to fight for that zero number, we've got to be able to support. And, it's just the nature of the beast there. These things are expensive.
So I don't know if you guys can see on the bottom of this screen. I just put up a comment, but for some reason on our end, it doesn't. It says Facebook user. It doesn't show
a name or.
So anything. I'm looking at my phone to see if I can, line it up with the comment. But it says Titusville is extremely hard to get through to. When we formed our group, what's your group? To get the ordinance changed in order to be able to have chickens, obviously not the same of this issue. The only one who replied was the vice mayor at the time. Dan was a council member then. They are all entrenched in their ways. Dan is very good at talking out of both sides of his face.
Oh, goodness.
But, and I think these are the conversations that we need to continue having and allowing the community a space to use their voice and to talk about these things. I mean, council members need to know how you guys feel about them and that you don't feel like you're being heard or that
you're disappointed in their actions.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're allowed to voice those opinions. It's a hard job. I can imagine that it's a pretty hard job, and I would imagine that their phones blow up all the time too with, all sorts of probably even ridiculous requests and concerns. But they're just people. They are just people, and they're not unreachable. They may be hard to get through to. I've had that experience where I've reached out to members in the community and leadership and not had them give me the time of day. and that is extremely frustrating. But you know, that's when you go.
Did it ever pass? Did it ever pass?
What's
the chicken?
The
ordinance.
chickens? Yes. Did the chicken ordinance ever pass? We don't really know who you are because we can't tell your name on. It just says Facebook user on here. So please let us know if it passed. Yay for the chickens!
Oh, Titusville Backyard Chickens in our is our group. Yay! Okay, cool. Yes, it did.
Good for you. Say, you know,
it
is. I would imagine that it probably was a result of that
awesome.
Civic engagement that you managed to get that win, and good for you. That's awesome. And I love chickens. They're so cute.
Well, guys, we've been on here 50 minutes now, and we're going to be doing lives a lot more. We're going to try to do better than like sitting out by the traffic, but we felt it was super important to have this conversation, bring you guys into the conversation right after the presentation. And if you're rewatching this later, let us know. Be sure to comment, say I'm rewatching. And any other, if you guys feel encouraged, I definitely email your city council and let them know that this issue is important to you. You could say, I wasn't able to make the special presentation, but this is important to us. And if you feel that Fight for Zero is a great resource for the city of Titusville to collaborate and to work together, even if that means getting somebody from the council to Tallahassee this year to advocate for PFAS legislation, anything to get us moving forward in this county, please feel free to let them know that as well and say, like, we would love to see this collaboration. And hopefully we can have more people on live to have these discussions. I know there's a lot of candidates that are running. So make sure you guys look at all of that stuff. We don't really get political, me or Elizabeth. And we're like, we don't want to get involved with the politics. But so I think we've pretty much covered everything, don't you?
I think so. And thank you so much, guys.
Yes, thank you.
We're trying.
And you guys have a wonderful night.